And a former Veterans Affairs employee is suing the Trump administration after she was fired last week. The VA says it has dismissed more than 1,400 probationary employees in non-mission critical positions. Now at least one former worker says her firing was arbitrary, broke federal law, and violated her Fifth Amendment rights. Let's bring in senior reporter Katherine Faulders and ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmire for more on that. Katherine, this former employee says her performance reviews were glowing and that she served at the VA for 19 years. So how was she classified as probationary? And what more do we know about who's being let go in these layoffs?
Right. So her performance reviews, as you mentioned, were stellar. And that led for this employee to get a promotion that she began in the Office of the General Counsel at the Veterans Affairs Department in May of 2024. Now, she had been working at the VA since 2006, but because of that promotion, because of her stellar reviews, was then classified as a probationary employee, given she started that new role in 2024. Now, she is challenging that along with her lawyers, saying that she was mistakenly classified as a probationary employee and that she had glowing reviews, that she shouldn't have been let go. Of course, the notice that she received when she was terminated said because of her performance that you have not demonstrated your further employment at the agency would be in the public interest. Now, that flies in the face of, obviously, her promotion and her reviews. So her lawyers are challenging that firing, Diane.
Brian, how strong do you think this former VA employee's case is?
So it seems pretty strong on its face. It is going to depend on the internal memos and conversations that were had, but ultimately she's making what's called a Fifth Amendment argument, both for substantive and procedural due process. She's saying the steps that the law affords her, that if she is going to be terminated, they need to show how she had poor reviews, how she is not in the best interest of the public to be employed, and that simply wasn't there in her termination on February 13th. And she, of course, points back to earlier notifications that she was doing a good job. So both in terms of how this was done and why it was done, and then also fighting that she should not have been on probation, as Katherine pointed out, that seems like pretty strong arguments.
So, Katherine, what other legal challenges to these federal layoffs are you watching?
Yeah, well, there are dozens, in fact, I believe over 70 challenges, just generally speaking, to the Trump administration's actions. But as it relates to DOJ and Elon Musk's and the federal workers, there are plenty. So many unions, of course, are suing as it relates to those layoffs. We saw the USAID legal challenges, for example, that ultimately were allowed to move forward. But there's many challenges moving through the courts right now, challenging DOJ, generally speaking, their access to sensitive information, particularly at the Treasury Department, which, according to one judge, is on halt for now. They can view that in a read-only form. But there are multiple lawsuits across the country challenging these firings. This one that we're talking about specifically about the VA is I believe, one of the first ones, at least known ones, more public ones, that we've talked about in terms of getting a promotion. And I just think it's also worth pointing out, too, with the latest drama unfolding inside the federal government with that email that Elon Musk sent out. At one point, Musk said that if you reply, you will get promoted. Well, this obviously sends a chilling effect for promotions if you are then a probationary employee again and have fear of losing your job.
Brian, how do you see these challenges playing out?
I think they're going to get stuck in the court system. This lawsuit specifically is asking for injunctive release, asking to pause the termination of this employee. And I think that's going to be granted based on the evidence that they presented. And ultimately, it's going to be the federal government has to provide the receipts. Why did you do this? What's your explanation for it? You said this was the reason, but you did not fully flush that out in their termination. So provide that, and it's going to be argued in court for these individuals. Hopefully, it gets argued in court while they're still employed and not unemployed.
All right. Brian Buckmire. Katherine, thank you both.